So Alan at org. That's a nice email address. That should be downstairs. How do I get it to use that mic?
Yeah. No, honestly, I'm pretty sure we're there. I'm pretty sure we're there. You just relax, chill out. Yeah.
Nobody's going to see it though because I can't contact the people who wanted to. Let's see these again. Right. That.
Can I just show you out here so you're happy? So obviously they come in here, what they've got red and white wine. Right. Let's go first.
You reckon that's one? Hello? Does that make sense? Good evening.
for the cold hands, I'm afraid. It's quite chilly. But it's much colder out there than you think. And I put on a thin jacket. Yes, yes. Fine, thank you. Thanks, Liz. Yes, yeah. Okay. I arrived very early, so I wasn't.
interesting application because you only can implement it, it's not going to
So what we have here is a lectern.
A lectern? Oh yeah, brilliant. I love lecterns.
Yep.
Yes, I can do this, I can't see your hands shaking. True.
Can I put these on the chair? Right? Yeah.
I had a speech the other day,
Yep.
and at the dinner, and there was no lectern.
Yep.
There was no thread mic.
Right.
And I had notes which I was trying to read from. And you try and hold a mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Put it in there.
So you got one hand to do
There's no
it.
lectern. That's why I say I like lecterns.
So we have a laptop here which is linked up to the projector.
And the
I don't have your slides yet. Hopefully, Andy.
oh, okay.
Thank you.
Then we'll just check the
Just says WCIT presentation.
pass forward, forward and back. Yeah.
Yep, and that's just going to be using the.
Oh, just the
things, I think.
I don't know what you call it. It's not the mouse, but the buttons below the mouse. And you've got about 18 or so. 18
Yeah, 20. Well,
Is
18 to
that,
20.
is that, you happy with that?
Well, it's the first time we've run it.
Well, I don't know what you're.
We need governors for 2 schools.
You need them, do you? Who's going to say that sort of thing?
Oh, it won't be. Don't worry, it won't be. I mean, I'll say some stuff. This is more about putting people off and getting them to doing it. The point being that it's an onerous task, and unless you really commit to it.
Well, it's quite good to have that flavour because I was going to encourage them to stand up. You want me to get them to sit down?
Please do whatever you need to do. It's but it is an onerous commitment. It is not.
I know it is.
But we have about 6 or 7, perhaps 8.
And you've got the Hampstead Academy. Okay. So Lillian Bayliss is that's not good with nurses, or not?
Yeah.
No. Okay, so you have a need for governors. Okay.
Currently, we only have a need for governors in
Oh, okay, all right.
Oh, it's a wonderful time, but it's.
Fine.
So, we
Now, John, I'll introduce Debbie and
Debbie Anstey.
it's so good to meet you. Thanks ever so much.
No, delighted.
Oh, Michael,
Can I go
Michael,
and cook
yes.
before I just go and
Should we put it in the
I'll take it first.
Drink it over a chair, for instance.
I was going to say no, that I said they would.
No, 2 years before him.
Right.
And I saw Wim Tennant
So-
and he sent his regards.
It's not nothing
No,
to
no,
do with
no,
university.
no,
I know,
You're going to win
I
the
know
university.
I know him very well.
At
I know
the end
him-
of the evening,
But I know him very
for
well.
as much as
Right.
an hour, half an hour, to
Yes.
quarter an hour, depending on how many questions you get.
What's the
There's
name?
going to be a desk here. We'll have a plenary session.
Uh,
At that point,
a
because you would
golfer,
have been introduced
Yeah.
before,
Roy Nicholson.
if you could just introduce yourself,
Played golf
together with Nick Burns.
Huh?
Yeah, you know,
He's sorting with all these
Oh, well,
people.
I've been playing quite
So,
someone
It'll be
who
fine.
was
We'll
at
all
university
go.
with me doing economics, and I'm trying to remember
Microphone.
his nickname is
Yes,
essentially he's Welsh.
That's
And he
David
plays World
Richards.
Football. David Richards.
Yeah, I'm just persuading us, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw
Yeah, well,
I said they'll introduce themselves.
see you.
Yeah, lovely. Very good.
I
Very
was
good.
in.
And likewise.
Can you work a Windows
I
box?
think I-
Can you work a
I
Windows
think
box?
your two
Because your
years
slides are on there.
behind me.
I'm a Mac person, so I've got no idea
I was
what
on
to
65.
I know.
I was having 60.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 73 now.
Sitting over on the court table, sort of muttering,
So-
muttering to your mates and being
Well, I
fucking
was
trouble.
just talking to Mike to register. I
We
get to
did.
that
We
situation
met each other.
next year,
on,
so
but
6
not
months
well.
time actually. So I say
I
6
think we
months.
met each
Yeah.
other.
Do you want to bring this up now, or
It
you
was a
want
long
to
time
just put it
ago.
on the desk?
If you bring it up now, that's fine.
I think so, yes, I think that's the plan.
We'll
I'm just
test
going
it
to
out.
come outside as
Test
well.
it out.
Are you?
Yeah, heavily involved
do you want
with
us to
Dave
sit
and I and with
anywhere
Ralph
particular or
Campbell
not?
Oates
You can
and all
sit
that sort of
wherever.
stuff. I'm telling
I
you,
knew you
great.
about it, but David
I'll
Richards.
sit myself here.
Yeah, but David, I see a lot.
You can work the camera if you
Yeah, I
wish.
see it.
No,
Yeah,
we're
my
live,
son
you
went
know,
to
we're
Bristol as
broadcasting
well.
live on YouTube.
And my
Ah,
son.
very
Oh,
good,
yeah.
very good.
He did English.
Right, it's up on the
My son
computer.
Okay, so what we need to do
Uh,
is when the
I
time
went down
comes,
to place in
we
Oxford,
press that button,
to upset my school, as it did.
Oh,
and that brings your
and
slides
so
up.
they could Bristol.
And then press it
My
again.
son instead, thank you, I got some quick check.
Yes,
on
do.
that. My son instead.
Sorry there, I'm the only
Didn't get into Oxford, thanks
Nice
to
to meet you,
the
Nick.
wrong
Fast,
thing.
We've met before, haven't we? I think you've been up to the call.
That's what we try to get next and do the right thing. Thank you, said no doubt. I want to go to
Oh, the training
Right,
in,
They said, they told me,
yes.
they told me that I want to go to
Yes.
Bristol. That's what
Yeah, we did another one this year.
Good.
Right, let's have a quick look.
Would you like a drink? Of anything?
In a minute, can I just, I'll come through. Let me just
Turn
do it.
that on.
It's on a slideshow, you should be able to click now. No, take that off.
Okay.
We shouldn't need to do that, we should just be able to click.
Okay, so I should just be able to go back to the force on that.
Yeah, so
You may be able to use the arrow keys as well.
you'll have to go, if you want to go back, you'll have to use previous.
Well, should I just use the arrow
Yeah,
keys?
the arrow
Perhaps?
keys are-
Let's just try the arrow keys. There we go.
There we
If I did.
Very good.
Yeah, I'll just use the arrow keys. Good.
Hello there, Nick Bullock, we met before.
I'm sorry,
Sorry, this
guy's going to get really worried about me. Everybody's met me before somewhere. I'm a serial
Thanks for your help this evening.
serial liberal.
No, that's all right. I've been to Elstree today.
Probably about a
deputation.
Probably last time, the first time.
So,
I'm very, very.
it went really well,
Liberal
to be honest.
Well, I was master of our company last year.
Oh, okay,
Both the
right.
boys and the girls are very successful independent schools. But it was quite interesting. The chairman of the girls' school went to Adams Grammar School with Props. We do a trustee visit where they check on the estate. And obviously, he was having chat with the bursar and the accountant. And he came back and he said what they achieve with the money they get. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm so used to Elstree.
Yes.
He said, they tell you they make £4,000 per day. 15 and a half it is in Elstree, is what they work as a country. And he said, well, I said, well, depending on the state schools, in London you tend to get a bit more.
Yeah, I imagine that.
And actually, it's a classic example in London. It's about 6,000 and something quoted. The Federation is getting for its pupils. Well, there's a £2,000 gap there straight away between Shropshire and London. So I think when they do this fair funding, so we met actually, yeah. When they do this fair funding bit, that I think that might come as a shocker if they take money away from London schools. The problem with that is it costs money. So if you want to try and attract the teachers and recruit in London, well, I'm sorry, you just have to pay them more. It's as simple as that. So yeah, we'll wait and see what happens.
I think there's a lot of challenges around what the government wants and the reality of life.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the white paper, we're looking at the white paper and there are some real challenges. But there are also some opportunities for us, if we're honest, because we like this through life approach. We like to have the primaries and the secondaries. And we're just about to open another school in Southwark. At Southwark, we're adamant that we could not have the primaries. No, you can open a secondary for us, thanks very much, but you're not having the primaries. And you go, all right, okay, so you play the long ball and hope that it's going to change. And below me, they produce this white paper and it says by 2022, every school will be in a multi-academy trust. And so already we're saying, well, okay, go back to Southern and say, you've got a lot of primaries, you're going to have to put in multi-academy trusts. We can help you because we'll take 2 or 3 for Southern.
We're talking, I don't know about the math and stuff, chat with me. Because we got a real question with the Smith Academy. Because the easiest option for us is probably to put the Smith Academy into the nurseries Academy Trust thing. But obviously part of that then is from an optics view, it may not be seen as this 50-50 partnership that we've been really keen on having a clear 50-50. If you want to keep it 50-50, then we set up an Academy Trust based around Hammersmith Academy with feeder private, and we have done some work and discussion, and there are several other schools in that area that we at look at it. I think it was for a multi-academy trust to work by the maths that I've seen. You really need 5 to 7 schools in it.
Is it that large?
Well, if you want to, for example, if you want to attract the right caliber of leader, so CEO, I've heard lots of figures bandied about that, down here you're looking 120 plus, depending on how many schools you've got. But to justify that, and to justify having some central staffs, you need at least 5 schools. For example, we started off with 3. We're about to go to 4. Still, in theory, the central staffs are on a bit of a hold. And they tried to trim it back and said, "Oh yeah, we don't need to do HR and stay with schools and culture." You don't want to be doing that. You want to say, no, there are enough schools to justify the economies of scale.
And it's the finance and maintenance elements where there is definitely a big survey.
Yeah.
But I think that we've got the discussions we've got to have coming up is, do we want to do it the hard way or the easy?
Yeah.
And
what values do you want your school to have? I mean, when I say we're looking, we control through government, so all our schools, Haberdasher is on the controlling, has the controlling interest on the board, and then we put governors in local school boards. But if I'm honest, we're maybe getting to the maximum number of governors that we can generate at any one time, because you might have 980 and 300 something. They're already saying, it used to be you had to be a government. Now they're saying they're recognising who can be governors. And actually that'll help you, because out of that 300, you need 100. And it's hard to get 100 to be working all the time.
Well, we're the new boss, and thank you for helping us with this thing, because we support resources and we know we 6 companies, but we're starting to realise we need to start, and also the other thing is I've had discussions with your predecessors or the other that I'll touch on the conversation. He says, well, if you're going to do the government with IT skills, could you find us someone?
Yeah.
And I think we both, John and I, hope that with this, we can start a system of creating a pool. And if at any time we can improve of 5 to 10 is all of people to support our own schools, and possibly if we wanted an IT specialist, and more nurses wanted an IT specialist, we can draw on that pool.
I think that worked really well, because one thing we're doing now is they're trying to set the skill set there. And IT is a particular skill that you'd like the government to have, because you might have somebody doing the IT, but whether they're doing it right, whether it's in the best interest of the school, you don't have somebody who really knows what they're talking about. You're approaching it as a layman. Sometimes you can get away with that. But IT is moving so quickly. But IT is moving so quickly. And you could get a government come in and say, actually, do you know what it should be? And that'll save you money. At the moment, you've got all these people trying to find that information.
And also from an employment point of view, there are lots of jobs in technology. There's a real skill shortage. And I was talking to the mentor of Royal Signals meeting the Royal Signals at present are really struggling to recruit good people. And they are, and I think there's all the messages about the cutbacks in the armed forces a few years ago. But they still need junior people coming through all the time. And their current planning is they've got a 20 to 30% shortfall on new recruits coming through. And there's not enough officers with engineers and technical qualifications. So it's across the piece. The Royal concepts are looking for people. You can look at software houses, you can look at banking, like the fintech companies. There's a real shortage over there, and a good app developed now, £40,000 to £60,000. And you can, so you can be in the mid-20s. I would say you can get
almost
eight.
afford to live like that.
Yeah. And I know that I was talking to 3 of our members who run app development companies. I think I've told you this story before. One of them outsources everything to the Far East. He says it actually costs him about £40,000 per annum is the salary, and he can actually have them developed in the Far East, Singapore. One of them pays a bit more because he actually wants people who he pays £50,000 to £60,000, but he recruits his work to come here and will get them set up happily. Work for that money. One of them works for fintech, works for financial institutions, and clients from companies, and they don't want their data being outsourced out of the country, or they don't want somebody from Eastern Europe to work in it. So they've got a strict rule that they only employ British-born citizens in that, and he's paid £80,000 a year. Now, if you're a young person, to be able to know that in your 20s you've got a chance of earning that sort of money,
The thing that I think it'll take a while for people to realize that.
oh, Master, you're showing me what?
How are you? That's me, Andy Ellison.
Because I'm
That's Susan.
Thank you for doing this.
Full IT day. That's all. What are you doing? Are you going to get a in? Or are you going to?
so if you were to welcome at the start, it is the plan. We've got a little bit longer before people arrive, it's past as well. We are departing, and it formally starts. I believe
So we can start any time between 6 and 8.
Yeah, I think
If you wish to be aware of it.
No.
So I think we have to be done for 7:45.
6:45 for 7:15.
So that's why
Real men don't arrive at 6:45.
because they're a bit earlier. Which is
So
why.
the real men are a bit later.
Okay.
We're all the riffraff.
We can stop for a drink on the way down there. So I've booked a taxi for 6:30. So I didn't want to run the risk of being late.
We're being broadcast this evening for the first time. We're on YouTube.
Oh wait.
If you open your phone, you can see yourself presenting. Should you wish.
Don't tell Michael that.
Michael already knows. I didn't say we're on YouTube.
So we,
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make your way in.
I see, it's super busy.
like I have even
We'll leave that because you'll be sitting in front of the screen. We're broadcasting.
You want to sit here?
I'm going to sit over there by the camera
So I will be
for the moment.
I'll be your IT support.
You're my IT support.
No, I am John's IT support.
John's IT support.
Yes, just in case.
I need to support that.
Oh, okay.
We're currently live being broadcast on YouTube, so if you bring your iPhones out and go on YouTube, you can watch yourself. Should you wish.
Where is
Sorry,
the
I didn't mean you to hear that.
Where is the camera pointing?
It's pointing. Well, that you can see it over there. That's where the
Oh, I
camera's
see.
pointing.
Okay. So.
First time from the hall. Would you like to start?
Well, I think we are all here, as Michael enters. My name is David Wotton. I'm the honour of being Master of the Information Technologists this year, and I am delighted to see you all here. Thank you very much for coming to talk about what it means to be a school governor. I have had some experience of being a school governor. Others in the room will have had rather more. The Information Technologists is a young company. We're 24 years old into the delivery. We will be celebrating our 25th next year. We are just getting going with our contribution to the education world. Other livery companies, the Haberdashers, the Mercers, their contribution to education goes back centuries, and they have very active and long-standing and very successful involvements in a number of schools, old and new, and we are learning from them, and you who have not been school governors will, I hope, learn this evening and subsequently from those who have been. Being a governor of a school is something that you can do without having to have a PhD, without any particular qualification other than a general education and an enormous amount of commitment and common sense. In recent years, the government and authority has made things a bit more difficult by reminding governors that never mind that they're volunteers, never mind it's their own time, there are obligations, legal obligations, and indeed there are. I'm sure some of them will be mentioned. But the emphasis on those is really for the kinds of governors who you would not be, those who are in the pocket of the headmaster or don't turn up or don't pay attention. And for those who do turn up, do apply an independence of mind and work out what the job is and then do it, will have nothing to worry about on that score. As I say, being a governor of a school is a great thing to do. It's something that adults can genuinely do for the coming generation, and I hope very much that you will enjoy and learn a lot from this evening. Thank you very much for putting this evening on. I hope my YouTube performance is satisfactory.
They're expecting a magic trick, Master.
I'm sorry that Mike revealed himself too early to some of you in his white tie. We were planning a dramatic entry so we could use the joke, you know, we're sorry you didn't hear about the change of dress code. But they are welcome. Thank you very much for coming, and please carry on. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this evening. It's great to see you here. It's an important topic that we're talking about tonight, being a governor, but it's also something that we can have a lot of fun with tonight, I do hope. So we got some excellent speakers. We've got some excellent headmasters. There should be another one along soon, I guess. Do you know where he is at the moment?
I don't know, but he should be on his way. But I'm a straight man, so.
Okay, so this is what the evening looks like. We've just heard the welcome from the master. My name's John Hall. I'm giving introductions. Then we have Michael Jeans, past marshal of the Haberdashers, that will talk about being a governor. We have a schools perspective, which we're going to have a little bit of fun with the two Garys, who I'll introduce later, Gary Phillips and Gary Kinaston, who are headmasters of the William Bayliss Technology School and Hammersmith Academy, respectively. Then we're going to have a plenary session where you can ask your questions and hopefully have them answered. And then we'll have a little bit of discussion and networking, and then we'll all have a safe journey home. So, my name's John Hall. I'm chair of the Washington Company of Information Technologists Education and Training Committee. That's quite a mouthful. It's a great thing we do in the livery. We've had many centuries of contributing to schools, to children's education. The liveries have created some of the greatest schools ever in this country. WCIT is a relatively young livery company, but we've done our bit so far in starting one school and helping another. We support 4 schools, I believe. So we support Hammersmith Academy, we support Lillian Bayliss Technology School. There's Trelaw's School, which was set up by our own past master Dame Stephanie. And then we have the Priory School as well, yeah, which has a great and long tradition of working with the livery. I just wanted to make sure, though, tonight, you weren't here expecting a production of One Man, Two Governors. If you did, I could understand your confusion. It is a really extremely funny play. I don't know if anybody's seen One Man, Two Governors. You found it funny. It's fantastic, isn't it? If you haven't seen it, go out and see it. It's really funny. But we're here to talk about livery. Both Lillian Bayliss Technology School and Hammersmith Academy attended our most recent event, the Livery Schools Link Showcase, which many of you were there. Thank you for going. The students had a great time. Around 600 students passed by our stall. We had 3D printers. We had experts in 3D printing who helped them do that. Photographs on the left are of girls from Lillian Bayliss Technology School asking our friend Mark, I've forgotten his surname, really nice guy. Do you remember his name?
Yeah, no.
No.
Yes, Dave.
Adam.
Nice guy. No, I don't remember his name.
He was Polish with an Italian name, but he was a really nice guy, and he really let the students get involved. And they were doing stuff that they couldn't do at school, and that was nice. And on the right-hand side, we have some Hammersmith Academy students who were working with some microbits, I think, or was that?
Yeah, one of us, Steve Smith, brought all his Raspberry Pi computers that he built himself, and he also coded a program so that the children would try to land a rocket. That was the program that he wrote.
Yep.
And so we had all the kids. I was gathering kids everywhere, like, come and try the rocket, come.
And they really enjoyed it, didn't
Oh,
they?
we really enjoyed it.
They got something out of it. And we were well fed too, because in the background here, you'll see this is the butcher's stand, I think.
Yes, indeed.
And the butchers had both the best female and the best male apprentice butcher. They come to the stand and they had whole sides of meat they were bringing in during the day, and they turn them into sausage meat, and then they cook them. And these people could do things you can do with meat. It's amazing what they. But anyway, that's why so many people stayed so long there. I'd like to say also, at the next training, education and training committee meeting, you'd all be very welcome. I know many of you already attend education and training committee meetings. We do a lot of great work. There's a lot more great work that we could do. So if you do want to come along, please do. It'd be very good to see you there. As David mentioned, one of the most important one of the most important roles we can play in school is that of a school governor. I know many of us here tonight have been or are still school governors. Some people's lives here are defined by their role as a school governor. Is that right, Michael?
I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. And you're going to give us some taste of that experience later in the evening, I hope.
Good and bad.
That's good, because we need to dissuade people who are not really committed. As you know, WCIT nominates governors for 2 schools. We nominate governors for Hammersmith Academy, on which we have 4, and we nominate governors for Lillian Baylis, on which we have 2. There are some positions free at the moment, and so we need to fill those positions. But tonight is a way of introducing people who want to be governors to the idea of being a governor, and hear from people like Michael Jeanes, who's going to talk about his expertise in this area. This is our first prospective governors' evening. We hope to have more. We hope to attract more governors so that rather than just servicing the schools that we do, we can make it a national thing. We would like to have governors working locally in their communities. And so one reason we're on YouTube tonight is so that people can look at this regionally, and if they want to be involved regionally, that's a good thing they can do as well. So that would be very nice to do. So, with no further ado, Michael, could I welcome you to WCIT? Allow you to tell us something about being a governor. And it should just be a matter of pressing this button. But you may like
I can't reach that button.
You might like to cross your fingers.
I'm going to press this button.
I just turned it on. That wasn't good. There we go.
Okay, right. Good evening, everybody. I was slightly amazed as Andy Ellison, the Director of Education, is here with me tonight, back, as he and I were walking along Bartholomew Close, well, actually Cloth Fair, just past Founders Hall. We were greeted by a man in a white tie saying, hello, Past Master, hello, Director of Education, welcome to WCIT. And we thought this was rather OTT, being dressed in a white tie. And were somewhat taken aback, thought we might make a heavy retreat back to Haberdashers' Hall and get properly dressed. But anyway, as I said, Sir David said, we've sussed out his joke rather prematurely. Anyway, it's lovely to be here. I've been to many, many livery halls. I've been a master of 2 companies and about to be a master of a 3rd. I'm a sucker for this sort of thing. But I've never been to this hall before. Heard a lot about it. Never been here, so it's absolutely lovely to be here. Thank you very much, and thank you for the warmth of your welcome, which is fantastic. I've also, apart from being a serial master or serial commitment to the whole livery movement, I actually have been a governor of a school more than once since 1985. I currently sit on chair a board of a local governing body of a primary academy, and I sit on the board of a multi-academy trust. And I've been on the boards of independent schools, maintained schools. I sit on the DFE thing, which straddles the 2. So I have no commitment to whether this is independent or maintained sector. We'll talk about it perhaps a little bit towards the end. Let's just firstly talk about, as John's mentioned, this whole thing about the livery company involvement. It goes back hundreds of years, centuries. I guess all to do probably with the idea of apprenticeship and training. That's where it really comes from. And then a lot of companies started schools. The Haberdashers has a number. I've listed some of the companies that have schools on this slide. I've deliberately avoided putting them in any order of precedence. I've even humbly put Haberdashers last, and I put Skinners first. I haven't got into 6s or 7s or anything like that. I've just sort of avoided that whole issue. And there are more than the 8 I put up here. But these are all significantly involved with schools. And I won't mention the various ones, it would take forever. I think there are more than 100 schools with which livery companies are involved. There are differences to the way in which the livery companies get involved, and we can talk about that later if you wish, but it differs from whether you just offer up, you have one governor position on the board, or whether you have the Haberdashers' philosophy that you will not get involved with the school unless you control the Board of Governors, in other words, have the majority. And that's quite different, obviously, in terms of the degree of influence that the livery company can have. So those are the ones there, and as I say, they all differ a bit, quite a lot actually, in the way that they get involved. But we can discuss that later when we talk about what, if necessary, what WCIT might be looking for. So why become a governor? And this is where I may become a little bit evangelical, because I do believe in it so passionately. And the first one, I suppose, but given that I've now been involved with both sectors, is that education can bridge the class gap. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm looking for livery companies to get involved in social engineering, but it is a way where livery companies often perceived as being, rather distant dining clubs, sometimes male dining clubs as well, particularly the older ones, not the older males, the older companies. And it helps to bridge that and to say this is really something where livery companies can demonstrably give back in whatever that school may be, whatever that type of school is. And I think that's incredibly important in terms of the way livery companies, modern livery companies particularly, want to be perceived. There is a huge need, in recent years increasingly recognised by the Department for Education, by government, to bring the worlds of education and work closer together. This whole thing about the gap that, hey, we're producing people from schools with A-levels, BTECs, whatever it may be, who then go on to university, but then they're not fit for employment. The employers then say, well, we now need to train them. We need to teach them to speak English, we need to teach them presentation skills, we need to teach them life skills, etc., etc. And there is this huge need to bring those two worlds together. And the government has seen this. There are a number of areas where it is beginning to happen. And of course, a livery company has people from the world of work, and a modern livery company from a particular area of the world of work, which can bring to this whole initiative, this whole need. It is an opportunity, of course, as an individual to give something back. That's a very difficult phrase. If you say it, you feel you're being slightly immodest by saying it, but it is an opportunity to give something back, to make a difference. They all sound rather hackneyed, those expressions, but in fact they are hackneyed. In my mind, does not decrease the importance of them. If you are employed, I'm not, well, no, I'm self-employed, but it's an opportunity very often to fulfill your employer's CSR, corporate social responsibility requirements. And actually say to your employer, look, I'd like to spend 10 days a year, we go on to time commitment, being a local governor. Will you support me in that? And will this help you as an employer fulfill our company's corporate social responsibility objectives? There are other ways you can fulfill that, but being a governor is one way. Sometimes, as we've often thought about in the haberdashers company, it's easier to make the case for spending time being a governor of a haberdasher school as fulfilling corporate social responsibility than it is to sit on the Court of Assistants. You try and explain to your employer what sitting on the Court of Assistants has got to do with corporate social responsibility. It's quite difficult, but you can do it in terms of being a governor. I don't think Andy should be here. He's going to report me back to the clerk or to the master. I don't care about the clerk. The master does worry me. So that's one. And then, of course, as John has said, it's a huge opportunity to support your livery company. Assuming that your livery company, from what I've heard, WCIT does, your livery company has a mission. Part of its objectives is to support education, support schools. If your livery company has got that objective amongst its various objectives, its vision, then it's an opportunity to be very supportive of that. And hopefully it might mean that I think there are quite a few taskmasters here, so they must have demonstrated it. Maybe an opportunity to demonstrate that you can be a future taskmaster, you've got to be a master first. So moving on, and incidentally, if you want to stop me at any time, that is absolutely fine. I think I've got a slide at the end that says any questions for each time. I've probably exhausted you, but if you want to stop in the meantime, please do. Some of the other reasons I would give to people who are thinking about this is that I know quite a lot of people who are in full-time employment and are seeking to get, maybe they're approaching retirement or want a bit of an out-of-the-box experience, seeking to have a non-executive director role somewhere. Those roles, maybe lots of you are non-executive directors, but they're quite difficult to get, particularly the first one, because you don't have any experience of being a non-executive. So you think, well, hold on, I want to do this, I want to be a non-executive, but you haven't got any experience, so you're a bit sort of catch-22. However, being a governor is quite close to being a non-executive director, as being a trustee of a charity is. And I think if you do it, it actually will improve or augment your CV when looking to achieve your first commercial, if you will, commercial NED role or position. If it's obviously not a boarding school normally, but if it is a maintained sector school or a independent sector day school, it's a wonderful way of offering support to the local community and getting involved with your local community. It provides a means of building social networks. There's some amazing people I've met through being a governor in the past. Social, I would also say maybe even business networks. I mean, the people I know who are the managing director of Arsenal Football Club, the government IT advisor who was Richard Susskind, all of whom I've met as being a fellow governor. And it's an amazing way of just meeting those sorts of people. For me, it promotes currency or being current with the next generation. I remember when I first became a governor, my children, and I have to admit my name, I think one of the surname is slightly strange, it's Jeans. And I have twin children who every now and then will call themselves the pair of jeans, which is fairly dreadful, but they enjoy doing that. And I remember one of them came back one night and said, Daddy, they're about 8. What does being a governor mean? And I tried to explain to them, and eventually I got through. Because one of them said, Daddy, does that mean you can tell the head what to do? And I said, well, actually, yes. I went up into my children's estimation beyond belief. Their father could tell the head what to do. But as far as they were concerned, the head was God. Yeah. So it provides that currency, but it also keeps you abreast with what's going on with that generation. Keeps you aware of the challenges that are being faced. And heaven knows there are enough challenges for that generation. And I think, as John must have said, the master did, it is an opportunity to have fun. Schools should be fun, are fun places. There are some terrible ones, obviously, but they're really fun places. It's a great environment to be in. If you go to a really good school, get involved with that school, it's actually very invigorating to come back from a visit there. Andy, I know, has been today to some of our schools out in Elstree. And I'm sure, Andy, without putting you on the spot, you would have felt invigorated as a result. Yeah, it's just incredible to get involved with schools. So what skills do you require? Well, obviously a commitment to education. I think that's been covered by earlier things that I've said. You've got to believe in this. You've got to believe that education is important and that educating the next generation is important. You need some specialist skills. And I now realize that I have to have an apology. I put specialist skills. I've got finance, property, HR, legal, and I haven't put IT. Absolutely ghastly. I'm surprised that I'm even allowed in the room, but you didn't spot it, John, and nor did you, Andy. It's awful. It's absolutely dreadful. Schools have lots and lots and lots of IT, but there are two sorts of IT they have. They have IT, which is to do with a teaching aid, and nobody now really, in lots of schools, they don't teach computer skills anymore. It's just implicit within every other subject and the way it's taught. But they also have masses of IT in terms of the way the school is run and supported. Huge IT in the way, you've got the whole security systems, the library systems, the catering systems, etc. And also the whole MIS side is IT. So there's a huge skill there. The only thing I would say is just take care, and I would say this if you're a bunch of accountants, lawyers, or whatever, it's great to bring that skill, but never ever say you're going to offer it for nothing. You're there because you understand IT and will know when it's necessary to engage, to pay for professional IT advice. So if you came in there and you're a chartered accountant, you say that's great. You're not going there because you're going to give free accounting advice. You're going to go there because you know about accounting and advice generally when the debate is about finance. But if specialist advice is needed, you're going to be able to say, hey, I think we need to employ something, an outside person or firm to give that advice. You need to be able to distinguish between, this is absolutely crucial and very difficult at times, it's a crucial non-executive director skill, to distinguish between strategy and management. So the degree to which you're going to be able to take what is called, let's say, the helicopter view as to what is going on in that organization, key issues, obviously to do with strategy, the way we're working towards fulfillment of that strategy, which is all about governance, but not diving into the detail of the way the school is run. That is the job of the headmaster, headmistress, and the senior management team. You get involved with that only if it looks as though it's going wrong. And that's quite difficult to explain. It's easier to explain, but we're going to go into loads of examples. And I think, John, you came up with this idea tonight because some of your people, some WCIT attended a Habit Asset Governance Training Day. And I think there's some case studies, and it wouldn't surprise me if some of those case studies were around this issue about, is this an issue for the governors or is this an issue for the senior management team? And it's not for me to suggest, but I'm sure if we've got space that people would be, from WCIT, would be welcome in the future, those people that are governors. Is that right, Andy? You're not in trouble by saying that? No, okay.
Not in trouble.
Always happy. The price is going up a bit, but that's it's lovely. Your neighbours as well. Okay, your neighbours. So it's actually understanding that role of what is called the critical friend. So you're a friend of the school, you're a friend of the head, and this is you as a group of governors, a friend of the senior management team, but you're going to be critical now and then. You are going to hold them up and say, you know, hold them up to account. But not to try and find fault with them, but just to make sure that they are on track, yeah? And to your head, aren't you, or something, yeah? You're not glowering at me yet.
No.
Is that?
Well, it's absolutely right. We've recently done a training with our governors about supporting them to actually ask more, critical friend type questions that the standard that Ofsted are now requiring.
Yeah.
For whole governing bodies, and that needing to be evidenced. But I think it's the same. It's just bringing the same standards that many people in our own governing boards and across deliveries have that level of skill and experience through the business world. It's, for some reason, we get into an education context and change some of their behaviours, and I think it's just applying the same kind of standards.
Well, I think that's why it's the analogy with the business world is the non-executive director. And are you Hammersmith Academy or? Yeah. Yes, I've just become chairman of a little primary academy up the road, Kensington Primary. Yeah. So it's a difficult one, but there is that role, and you'll find your way, particularly if you're going on a board and there are other more experienced governors there. The agenda, the sense of the way the meeting is being run will become clear to you. And then there's actually nothing wrong, because it is a rare commodity, as we all know, to demonstrate some common sense. It's amazing how it is rare.
Before you change the slide, can I just point out that you didn't have IT twice on that slide. One at the heart of commitment and one at the heart of critical friend. IT is core to the role of governance.
God, how did you work that out? I mean, next time I come around here, I'll look at every single, if I ever get invited again, I'll look at every single word on a slide and put the words IT in a different font or something, or capital letters or something like that. Gosh, that's a good spot. You must be involved with education. The next thing is a few caveats. Not too bad, a few caveats. The haberdasher's company, we don't know by any means the answers to everything. One thing which I'm sure, I know we've got a past master Mercer here as well, but one thing that we quite insist on, we don't think know all the answers, but I'm sure the Mercers, with all their involvement with academies and people like St Paul's, Telford, Hammersmith Academy, etc., I'm sure they don't believe they know all the answers. But one thing we are absolutely adamant about in Haberdash is that the board must be served by an independent clerk. It's a clerk to the governors, who should not be the finance manager of an academy trust, should not be the bursar of a school, should be independent and reporting to the board of governors, not to the head or somewhere internally within the school. Now, the independence is important, but it's also important that you are serviced well in terms of papers, minutes, anything you want, the clerk should be able to demand for you. It's absolutely vital. I've just got involved with a school where we haven't yet got an independent clerk. I've given them 6 months. And I said, if you don't find one, I'm off. It's not for me to produce the agenda. It's not for me to write the minutes. It doesn't work that way. So that's crucial. The other thing that the independent clerk can do is to ask for such things as put on the agenda, we want to report on the health and safety policy, we want to report on safeguarding, all these various legal requirements which governors are responsible for, but the clerk can ensure that you are updated on what those policies are and thereby safeguard you or protect you from being liable. There are two things that worry people mainly about being a governor. One is liability, and the other is the time commitment. Liability can be hugely reduced by being properly serviced by a clerk, and the time commitment normally is okay because schools tend to run to timetables. So you may have quite a lot of time commitment, but you will know well in advance when that commitment occurs. You can put it in your diary. If you are going to get involved with any particular school, I would suggest that you ask about their values. I'm not saying any one set of values are better than another, but unless they don't have a set of values, I think they've got a problem. Because I think any organisation has got a problem. WCIT would have a problem if it doesn't have some values, which I'm sure it has. I'm not going to ask you to repeat, but I'm sure that it has. Most organisations have got values. If you don't believe as a governor in those values, get out. I'm not saying you'll say they're the best in the world, but get out. They underpin the whole ethos of the school. You have to believe in them. You need to understand the policies that exist and to ensure, again, the clerk can help you with this, that they are applied. So how do we reassure ourselves that the health and safety guidelines are applied? How do we reassure ourselves that the safeguarding training, for example, has been completed? Now, that's a bureaucratic thing. It's not going to take up a lot of time. You just need to satisfy yourselves that it is applied. You're not likely to be sued, don't take this down, at least not with lawyers, for anything terrible that happens unless you're negligent. Right? You're only sued normally for negligence. As long as you're not negligent, if anything untoward does, heaven forbid, occur, make sure that there is personal liability insurance that exists, similar to a director's liability insurance in a company. And the other thing you can do, Haberdash does not actually really believe in this, we do it slightly differently, but you can incorporate the school. So it is an incorporated body, which means that any action is brought against the school as a body rather than the individual governors. That's a matter of choice as to how you want to do that. Make sure that you can work as a team with your fellow board members. You want to look forward to meeting. You want to look forward to board meetings. If you're going to, can't have a literary board meeting coming up, there's going to be Joan, is she dreadful? That's not, don't go to that. Yeah, just don't attend it. The other thing is, which is relevant to the livery thing, is that if you're appointed a member of a Board of Governors as a WCIT nominee, that's fine. But remember that once you're on that Board of Governors, right, with company law, as a director, your prime responsibility is to the school, the Board of Governors, not the WCIT. Right? That's just company law or charity law. Your prime responsibility is to the organisation in which you're a trustee, director, or a governor. That's normally not too difficult to discharge, but you need every now and then just to remember that, because it can sometimes cause tensions. What's involved? I'm nearly through. Am I overrunning, John? No. Board meetings. What's involved? Like I said, time and liability are two things that worry people. I think it's hopefully dealt with liability. Board meetings, they're normally 3 to 4 per annum. You probably have 1 per term, plus maybe 1 separate strategy meeting. Yeah? You will have subcommittee meetings, and inevitably you'll be put on a subcommittee. Typical subcommittees are finance, estates or property, curriculum, maybe performance assessment. Yeah, and that's probably about, those are the typical ones. And they'll normally meet once a term as well. And you shouldn't, they don't normally have audit committees, sorry, I think I'm an accountant, but they don't have audit committees. You shouldn't be put on really more than 1. That depends how large the Board of Governors is. But you're going to have at least 2 meetings, therefore, a term. So we're now talking about 3 to 4 board meetings, another 3. We're now getting close to 7 or 8 a year. And there'll be other school familiarisation visits, their school events, prize giving, plays, concerts, sports, etc. You should be seen. You should be seen by the staff, you should be seen by the students, and you should be seen by the parents. My brother-in-law, retired now, but he was deputy master of an independent school, and he said, we never saw the governors, we don't know what they do. They seem to turn up, they seem to have lunch with the headmaster, and then they disappeared. I mean, the staff just wondered what they were up to. Whether they were headmaster didn't want to expose the governors, whether the governors were frightened of being exposed, I don't know. I think probably they just hadn't thought about it. But you should be seen. You should be there every now and then to give ad hoc advice. Maybe this is because of your specialist skill. Someone's going to ring up and say, hey, we've got a major problem with the whiteboards in the school. What should we do? Don't go down to the school and with your IT skills and sort out the whiteboards. You might just sort of tell me what the problem is, and this is maybe where you need to go for advice. You need to keep abreast of change, and I'm afraid to say that education is, if you just read the national newspaper or media, it's not static. It's not a static sector. It is changing, and somehow you need to keep abreast of it. There are ways of doing that. There are, we'll come on to it, but there are at least 2 organisations, one of which I've been involved with today is the Association of Governing Bodies of Independent Schools, which lays on seminars for governors of independent schools. There's also something called the National Governors Association, which is sort of similar for the maintained sector. And the DFE, Department for Education, also runs courses. There are various things that the National, what's it called now, the National Academy also runs events. So it is incredibly demanding. And this is, I was trying to say to John earlier, what do you want out of this? And I said, you want me to encourage people to be a governor? Because I feel quite evangelistic about it. And he said, no, you're supposed to discourage them. And I said, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I think he said it, I think maybe your master said it. We want to encourage people to be a governor, but with their eyes wide open. We don't want people to become a governor and then not to demonstrate the commitment that is actually required. If you can do it, can spare the time, as far as I'm concerned, I've done lots of things in my life, and the most rewarding thing I have done is to be involved with schools. It just gives me, I'd love to say that, what's the sector I work in? I'd love to say education, it's not, because I'm not qualified to do that. It is just so amazingly rewarding. And it, for me, my other great love is the delivery movement. It just pulls the 2 together, given the history of delivery companies and their commitment to education. You've got, I think all your schools, John, they're not in the maintained sector. So I won't go into too much of this because it probably isn't relevant. Independent versus maintained, people are talking about that. At their heart, schools are schools. I'm also a governor of a school in Brussels. And so, okay, so independent versus maintained versus overseas or something. There are differences, but at the heart, they're schools. And their business models are really very similar. A school in Brussels, like the maintained schools, which I'm chairman of, and like the haberdasher schools, 70% of their costs are staff costs, for example. So that's a fairly standard model. The real differences are income, where if you're in the independent sector, you're going to charge parents. That may make you feel rather more accountable to the parents because you're charging them fees. You may have to justify that versus the GAG, which I never know what it stands for. It's the General Awarded. Go on, help me.
General Annual Grant.
General Annual Grant. And it's such simple. Yeah, it's what the government gives you if you're in the maintained sector. Normally not settled until far too late in the day, so we don't know, what we're trying to budget against. But essentially, it's as crucial to the maintained sector as the fee income is to the independent sector. We've got to operate within that budget. Within the maintained sector, there are lots of other things which make it slightly more difficult. Special grants and awards, we've got special educational needs, pupil premium, etc. And you need to get your head slightly around that. The length of the school day can be different. It's obviously incredibly different if you're into a boarding school. The curriculum, there is more freedom in the maintained in the independent sector. We then have a word which I absolutely hate, and there's an alternative word, two words I equally hate, called extracurriculum or curriculum enrichment, which are the things that you do beyond the prescribed curriculum, which are probably the things which are what employers really look for in the future and what create the character of the school. If you were happy at school, think back as to what you enjoyed. I doubt that it was the chemistry lesson. It was probably the school play you were in, or probably the sports team you played for, or something like that. And they create the environment where great learning and great teaching can take place. So I always get worried that them being called extra. I think they're really fundamental. They create that ambience within which the school operates. No, I think I better stop. I'm waiting for a school bell at that point, I think. Yeah. I say then the explicit values are quite different. What is interesting now is that the government, in its wisdom, I don't want to declare any political allegiance. I'm certainly not going to talk about Brexit. Is that they've announced that they want every single school by 2020 or 2021 to become an academy. There are massive problems around that, huge problems. It's going to cost at least 60,000 per school, and actually lots of schools which are performing very well can't afford to be academies. I mean, they've had to join with other schools. It just cannot happen that quickly. But the point about academies is that they do have a huge amount of freedom, much more than maintained schools did in the past. And that makes them much closer to the independent sector than they were. I've even heard them call that I'm an independent maintained school, and was independent state school and stuff like that. Confused words. But they're much closer than they used to be. And most of the principles of good governance apply to both equally. And if then you need some advice, or if you want to hear more, I know you maybe, or John wants to encourage you, and the last wants to encourage you to think about being a WCIT governor at the Lillian Baylis, I can't remember the rest of Lillian Baylis Technology School or the Hammersmith Academy. But there are lots of other schools out there, yeah, who want governors. There's a national shortage of governors in the maintained sector. There are about 300,000 governance issues in the maintained sector in England, about 30,000 light. And in certain areas, geographic areas, it's not just 1 in 10. There's massive gaps. Places you can go to, the National Governors Association, all these links are in the handout, I think, which, as I say, is sort of trade association of governors in the maintained sector. ESCOS, the School Governors One Stop Shop. Now they have a listing of governor positions that are available. AGVIS, which is the one for independent schools, and they put you in touch with independent schools that look at the governors. The New Schools Network, which is New Schools Around Academy, and Academy Ambassadors. The Academy Ambassadors, is an organisation which is desperately seeking people from the commercial world to become governors in academies of the main-tech sector, run by a great lady called Kirsty Watt. There's the Livery Schools Link, which David mentioned, I think you did, or you did, John, the master. Yeah, let's put on the showcase thing. And that's okay, that's a link, it's a cooperation amongst the livery companies about furthering the livery movement in schools. And so all those livery companies which are involved with schools, indeed some which are part of that. Again, they might be able to help, but they're just 5 of the organisations that are involved. And that brings me to that, and you've all been very docile. And I'm
sure that
happy to take any questions, so I can sit down.
I also noticed that IT is at the end of liability. So, would you like to take some questions standing up? Or would you like to take some
There may not be any
standing-
questions. I'm not going to be
Does
offended.
anyone have
I'm not going to be
questions
offended if there are not.
Nick,
Michael, you mentioned you're also a governor of a multi-academy trust.
Yes.
How would you talk a little bit about the differences between independent and maintain? How do you see the differences? What are the key differences that you've observed between a multi-academy trust and a single academy?
The multi-academy trust, my fairly limited experience, is an organisation which really, really requires the skills of people from the commercial world, because it operates like a holding company at the centre with, I don't know, it could have several schools underneath it, all of which may have a head or a principal. A holding company can or cannot perform certain functions. Will it have a central finance function? Will it have a chief executive? Will it be something which controls or supports? And this is very much like, is it a conglomerate or is it a company with subsidiaries? And I think the skills, this is not an IT thing particularly, but IT can be quite important. So are we going to have an IT, what's the word I'm trying to say, an IT policy, which says that we buy this sort of kit or have this sort of software throughout all our schools, or are we going to allow each school to do its own thing? And all we'll do is try and do some bulk purchasing. Does that help answer it?
Yeah, good stuff.
Okay.
And the complexity, how do you see?
Oh, it's much more complex than a single school.
So you just give me a degree of, is it double, 3 times, 10 times, sort of looking for sort of.
In terms of complexity, probably in a way, not to be repeated, I'm looking desperately at Andy because he's going to have a go at me. Haberdashers has a boys and girls school up in Elstree, which is sort of Premier League. And we've got the Haberdashers boys school. You've been to the boys school today, Andy? Yeah. Girls school, huh? Now that's got some 1,100 girls in it. And actually, the governor's in common with the boys school, but actually it's pretty independent. That is relatively simple to manage as long as you can keep the results up. It's highly selective. Yeah, so all the girls there are bright. Yeah, and it's funded. It's got fees. It's financially stable. You compare that to say Federation, the multi-academy trust down in southeast London, which has, I don't know how many individual units if you take the primaries and the secondaries all together, but maybe 10 individual schools, which have to take people with all sorts of special educational needs, banding, mission criteria set by the government, far more complex. So it's about the simplicity of the school in terms of the type of pupil and type of teacher you've got. In many ways, I would say that independent school is much simpler than the multi-academy trust by a factor of, I don't know, probably, I don't know how to judge it. It could be a factor of 3 or 4.
Can I ask how many
That-
people? Sorry.
Go on.
Can I ask how many people here are considering being a governor?
That's great.
Still.
So, how many people here were considering being a governor before you came?
That's nice. So thank you. I mean, does anyone? Do you have any
Yes, I mean,
questions?
I have two questions. A, how much is the help is provided for the new governors?
Sorry, how much?
How much help is provided for the new governors from the school or by their predecessors? It's not like your new job and that's it, you get on with this. So the second question is, this looks like to me a full-time job and even more than full-time job. It's like a 9 days a week job kind of thing. Why is it not paid role in a way? If it is not, then why not?
Okay. Firstly, let me deal with induction. Yeah.
Sure.
Then I'll try and deal with pay. I should have been on one of those slides in terms of those about becoming government caveats. One of the things you should check before taking it on is has the school got a good induction program for new governors? Now that induction can be given by the school itself, yeah, by the school allowing you to go on the appropriate training programs, by you being provided with a mentor, say one of the existing governors, but it'd be a combination of those things, yeah? Absolutely crucial. And it's a really good question. It's absent from my
So
slides.
if it is not available, you shouldn't be choosing.
I would suggest that you shouldn't, because you're going to be quite vulnerable. Yeah, I mean, you can take it on, but be prepared to take it on. I mean, they may say we're taking on probation. You could say back to them, well, I'm taking you on probation. Yeah, that unless you provide this sort of stuff, I can see that suitable training is going to be induction is going to be provided. I'm not going to do it. It's not a full-time job. It's I'd say it depends. It's not going to be every single day. I mean, lots of these things if it's local, if it's in London, you can get there. I mean, Haberdashers has schools in South Wales, in Shropshire, which makes it far more difficult to get governors to do that. The ones in London you can't get to. The meetings are programmed. It's probably 10 to 15 days a year, but it may not be all day. Yeah. And you can put that in your diary, maybe, and work around it. Yeah. And if your employer will accept it as corporate social part of the CSR program, that will help. The question of being paid is a difficult one. It's the same argument as to whether or not we should pay people to be local councillors. Yeah, or any of these roles. I don't think that people should be paid as an inducement to be a governor, because you might get the wrong people. If it's being paid some sort of honorarium as an acknowledgement that you've given up time and commitment, that's a bit different. But that is a personal view. I mean, it depends what you do, but I mean, a lot of people as governors, frankly, the school probably couldn't get close to paying what their daily rate is. And then, are you going to pay people a daily rate which equates to what they normally get paid, in which case everybody will get paid a different daily rate? So maybe better in a way just to leave it alone. It's a great question, but it's fraught with difficulty.
More questions?
Just curious, you mentioned the shortage that exists for any governments.
Sorry, what?
So you mentioned a shortage that exists.
Yeah.
Governments. What is schools do then if they cannot secure enough governments?
Well, they're probably okay. Maybe they may not, as long as they're core rate, they've got enough. One of the things that has changed, and it changed about 4 years ago, which means that there is now more demand for governors. There were two models of governance that existed. And there was a select committee of the Education Select Committee that looked at this, which I have appeared in front of on behalf of the Haberdashers Company. And those two models were one which was called the stakeholder model, and the other which was called the competence model. The stakeholder model was one where you saw these boards of governors which comprised the local vicar, the local member of the Labour Party, Conservative Party, maybe the Lib Dems, somebody from the Parent Teachers Association, etc., etc. and somebody from staff, where they all came there representing their particular group, the stakeholder group, and they actually forgot that their role and responsibility was to the school as a whole. You even got people who are members of the Old Boys or Old Girls Association. Remember the first one I went to, it was 1985, I didn't know anybody, and I sat around the table, it was up in Shropshire, and they only took anybody to make off one sentence. I knew who the priest was, who was wearing a dog collar. But the rest of them, they only had one sentence, and I knew where they were coming from. Government changed that and said, now what we want is a board of governors which has a wide range of competencies and diverse skill sets, and that has opened it up. What happens if somebody really, it's a really good question, what happens if somebody, they can't fill their board of governors? I don't know. I guess they probably would.
Well, we're going to have the two Garys on in a moment. They could answer that sort of question.
I don't know the answer to that. Must be
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
You haven't done.
I don't think they've closed the school. The other interesting thing is that now Ofsted and also the Independent Schools Inspectorate, they increasingly over the past, they may be changing at the moment, but over the last 3 or 4 years, I could never understand this. We had a Secretary of State for Education called Gove, who surprisingly didn't seem to understand the first 4 letters, or the letters of his name, which were Gove of governance, and didn't seem to really get into governance, and didn't understand. But then eventually he got hold of it and said, this is important. And there's been increasing emphasis at Ofsted and the Independent Schools Inspectorate now look at governance and will interview certainly the chairman of governance, maybe other governors as part of their inspection. So if there are no governors, I guess that Ofsted or ISI would say this school is non-compliant, which is pretty serious. There might be put in special measures as a result. That's my guess. I don't know. You're nodding, but
Yeah, you absolutely would be.
okay.
You're in deep trouble if you have no governance.
Yeah.
Michael.
Can I ask a question about professional indemnity
Yeah.
insurance for negligence? Because very few people would want to get involved in one of those. They're doing the voluntary work.
You can't normally cover for negligence. You can cover for making a mistake, something goes wrong, but negligence you can't normally get insurance against.
Well, negligence is doing something wrong.
Yeah, but if you're doing it because of
If
negligence,
it's deliberate, obviously you
Yeah.
can't.
But if you
get
found
insurance
that you
for
were
that.
negligent
But
in the-
inadvertent,
Yeah.
surely you can get.
inadvertently, yes, but deliberate
And,
negligence,
and is that provided by the school?
yes,
Okay.
paid by the school.
As I
It's
said.
like director's liability insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar to that.
Any more questions? Move on. Thank you, Michael. That was wonderful.
Okay.
Really informative. Thank you. Gary's, would you mind coming up, please? Now, they didn't want to do anything tonight, and so he sent an email yesterday saying, "What's happening tomorrow?" And I said, "We're going to run it as an interview." So I gave them 5 really easy questions to answer. The first one of which was, how did you get to be the head of a livery school? But I'm going to change the questions now.
He's got a glass
I
of
dare
wine
you
as
to
well.
answer. Now, why don't you tell us something about yourself? Why don't you tell us something about your background first? And I keep touching the desk, and the desk touches the clock, and the alarm goes off. So why don't you? So, and you weren't here.
Experienced person.
You weren't here at the beginning. So Gary said you said you were the straight guy.
Yeah.
So I guess that means you're the gay guy. Or are you talking about something else?
Yeah. Well, either way,
you can be
So why doesn't
you
the
can be
straight-
compo. I mean, first, just to actually go back and answer, just for I sort of say, how we got to where we are. I think interim executive boards, which is when schools go into special measures, but you can make arrangements in and around that, I'm sure. So, but just to kind of clear that one. What was really interesting for myself, and Tom Alube is the bottom right-hand picture over here. The WCIT was the chair of governors at Hampstead Academy, and soon after I got the job, he said, "Right, okay," and we went to one of his offices, which is any Cafe Nero around London. But he sat down and he sort of said 2 things. WCIT, you're going to have to change your phone and upgrade. That is awful. So that was the first thing, and I realised straight away standards were going to be very important. The second thing, he goes, "Do you know anything about livery?" And I said, "Absolutely nothing." And 6s and 7s, and I got a very, very
quick understanding, and a fascinating world straight away. I've gone through the comprehensive school system myself. Went to one of those box standard comprehensive that Tony Blair talked about when he talked about education. But a success, and the power that comes out of all of that is being inspired by teachers. And coming from an affluent family, and one thing you recognise with delivery companies, the number of affluent people that you meet who then want to actually start giving back, and I think that's so much where it all comes from. It's that essence of moral purpose and wanting to give back, and education is one great way in order to be able to do that. And so it's been a passion, for myself, and it goes with the name, of course, as well for Gary. That you do need that passion, and that's the kind of thing you're looking for in someone who's interested in coming on to being a governor. But luckily for me, 6 years ago, I was interviewed, gone through a process of selection, and what I didn't quite realise is that the interview that took place at the Mercer's library, and I realise now why it was, because when I walked in there were 19 people on one very long desk.
19.
That's why this
Literally
would not have been
people.
big enough. Yes.
We take our education seriously.
Absolutely.
Scary interview technique.
So there was various representatives from WCIT and the Mercers and everybody else. But I think the important thing is the number of people that are absolutely interested, and the number of people that want to come to the school and be involved. And I think I can answer a few more questions with that. That's very much been a short journey.
So,
What did you want to ask?
well, the original question was hello.
Hello, yeah, hi.
So, how did you end up as a head of a livery school? We're going to move on to the hard questions then.
No, I don't really know.
You don't know.
Okay, I'll tell you.
When you were there at the time.
Early 2000s, I got a phone message to ring a man called Tom Elube. No, it wasn't Tom Elube, it was Michael Jones. I don't think it was delivery anymore. And I rang him up, and he was driving somewhere. And he said, "Oh, we're having a competition at the livery company." And I'd only just taken delivery of a desktop computer. So as he said this, I was typing in livery company with one finger. And as he came, I thought, "Oh, yeah, they're trying to sell me something. This does look quite interesting, actually. We're having a competition. Would you be interested?" Yes, yeah. There'll be some funding. Oh, yeah, very interested. And then himself and Tom visited, and by then we'd worked out the livery companies. We hadn't really worked out how poor WCIT were compared to the top 10. But we thought this was the meal ticket, quite frankly. We just got 2% 580C with English and Maths, 480 children on roll out of 620. The attendance about 87, 88%. That's a national average about 95%. Things were pretty grim, actually. And so we put on a bit of a show for the day, and we had children and staff on each corner who would go, "Oh, hello, what do you do?" Said, "Oh, yes, I'm fascinated by the application of technology to today's education system," and all the rest of it. And we all went around this, and afterwards, Tom and Michael were extremely taken by the children, which is not difficult, I have to say. But also by the staff's willingness to embrace the possibilities of technology. We then came up to a meeting of 3 or 4 people. John Leafield led the whole enterprise, as people know him. And I didn't meet the other schools. We all came in during the course of the day, and for some reason we were chosen, I suppose.
Have you returned the silver yet?
No. So that's so we're.
Can I?
Of course, please jump in. Anybody that wants to jump in and ask
I don't know
difficult questions.
Story is right or my story is right, but my story was that the education and training committee of the livery company were actually at that stage working with an independent school somewhere up towards Stanford, and it was a bit boring, and we didn't seem to be making a great deal of difference. And then I think, what's his name, Oliver Lethwich or something?
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And he said something along the lines of, "Oh my God, this is the worst school on earth. Never send your children there." At which stage the entire committee dropped what they were doing and physically ran south of the river to Lambeth, because it was obvious we were going to be more help in Lambeth than where we were. And that I think, Gary, is the truth on that one.
Does that prompt your memory of it?
No, I came up here and did a pitch. I remember it very well. Yeah. For hours on end.
Okay, so we had something where Michael was saying that one of the most important things is school values. So the second question is, What are your school values? And they haven't been prompted about this question,
Oh, right.
so this is all off the top of your head. Who wants to go first? Who knows their school values?
You've written yours more recently.
He didn't ask that.
Liberty, equality, and fraternity, I think.
Absolutely.
Our school values are very simple. It is to do the absolute best by every child, and it's nothing more. And the only reason to become a school governor, it's a reason I was unfortunately one of another school, is because you want to do something, improve the lot of those children. It's nothing else. I mean, Michael talked about all the hidden benefits, you know, the CSR, you know, your first non-executive role and all the other things. But actually, if you're going to give up 10 evenings, which are pretty long and tedious, plus 10 afternoons, which can be glorious and wonderful, but can also be rather dull, you've got to actually passionately care about doing something for those children that you're working with and representing and supporting and challenging on their behalf of. And you may have other bees in your bonnet. You know, why isn't there more work-related learning? Why isn't technology used more? Whatever it is, but actually you've just got to passionately care about the young people who are there, and then find your interest and develop it. For some people, it might be extracurricular activities. For some people, it may be about safeguarding and health and safety. For some, their passion may be estates and you know, exploiting it for the best possible value. There will be something that you realise, I know a little bit about this, and I can nudge, provoke, challenge, support, point in the right direction. But the value is very simply to do the very best by the child, not necessarily, which isn't always necessarily the best by the institution in terms of performance measures, in terms of external accountability. And it's not always just about learning. It's often about the other hidden stories that you have to deal with constantly.
Can I just add something to that? Yes. Yeah. Let me just say something. I'm not being rude. What you said, do the best thing by the child, it's a very easy thing to say. It's absolutely right. And the difficult thing is to be able to judge whether the school really lives and breathes that belief.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a very.
It's not just a thing you put in the prospectus.
No.
I think that's the critical thing about being inside the school. One of the interesting, I know Gary feels the same way, is you can say something on a website, like anything, you know, it's window dressing. It's only actually at the point that someone comes into your school institution and actually says that you're letting and breathing that. Now you can ask outside people to come and do that. A great motive for us at the moment is members of staff coming in for interview. And one of the things I always say is, there's only one job available. I want to be in a tough position that 5 year employed. But the most important thing for me is you leave here and you're talking about this academy outside of the day, that you've had a great day and you can talk about that.
Yeah.
Across the table, my second question after, because we make them all teach, is tell me about your values and how they match with our values. First of all, you know how well they've read looked into the website, and then you can actually tease out their value set. And I say the same thing as far as governance. Absolutely agree. It's exactly the same kind of thing. You've got to be matched in the same kind of way. But it is about the stories. Some of the decisions that you make as head teachers, we bend over backwards as far as trying to do the best as far as the students. But sometimes one of the decisions you have to make is to exclude a child. It's the worst thing that you really want to do, but actually that's the right decision for the school and for that child at that time. So much of the work, and that's just a simple example, maybe at times doing something where you are holding sometimes the school to account, or sometimes I get from the governors, how have you held on to this child as long, which is another example. But again, it's about circumstance, the type of school and kind of things you want to be involved in, because depending on the type of school, you as a governor may be pulled in. There are some things that are going to be core. You may be looking at some of the teaching, maybe looking at some of the finance, and being part of the finance committee. But there are going to be different kind of conversation pieces between the independent sector, where you may be slightly more awash with money, and have some of those opportunities, and the maintained sector saying how can we stretch this more appropriately in order to be able to have the impact that you want, but still with the same ambitions. And I think that's what it's about. The values for us is ambition for every child to have the experiences that are going to have the direct impact on their future life chances. So really, it's about finding that balance.
Well, we could be really mischievous here and have a vote who thinks Gary Kinniston's values are better, but I don't think we'll go that way. So, okay, so how critical can a critical friend be? Or do you prefer the easy questions?
That's a clever.
How critical?
Have you
It's not how critical somebody is. I suppose you all know, and you'll all know it from your own work, your relationships. It's not about what you say; it's about when you say it and how you say it. And I've had some very perceptive, good, critical comments in full governance in front of the whole senior team. And before I've been able to say, well, you've got a point there, we'll look into that. The three people whose area it is have dived in, taken great umbrage, and then reported back to the rest of the staff that this particular governor has no respect for what they're doing. Whereas if she or he had kind of spoken to me beforehand or afterwards, or had asked to come in to kind of explore the issue a little bit more, we might have got a lot further. So it's no different in governance as it is to just working with one other person in an office who's screwed up on something slightly, how you talk to them and when you talk to them. And sometimes it's better to think of yourself not as a non-executive director, but to think of yourself as a coach. And what you're trying to do is coach better performance from the whole school, and your avenue in is initially the head teacher. I mean, tomorrow we have our kind of termly governor day, where every middle manager, every head of subject, every head of year will meet 2 or 3 governors who they've been meeting all through the year. They'll present a short one-page report on progress of students in terms of attainment, attendance, behaviour against their action plan. And that will be a great opportunity over the course of half an hour for governors to work critically with that particular member of staff and develop their thinking. And that's a way forward. A board meeting of 24 people, 18 people, 2 hours, you're not getting that much.
So we can, one, I think that links with your point about induction. Then to how you induct a governor, maybe small groups, and also your comment about saying, trying to help governors find a way into a school. I mean, they're quite complicated things. So if somebody's got an interest in languages, speaks 2 languages, then maybe get to know the modern foreign languages. If somebody likes football or whatever, get to know, it's not the only way you're going to know the school, it's so rooted in. The other thing, just a quick comment, I chair a board and a member of the board that was nominated to sit on it. And this guy raised a question, and the person, the staff from the senior management couldn't answer it. He said, well, you better have an answer before the next board meeting, because I'm going to be all over you like a rash. That was not a helpful
Did that get down well?
That was not a helpful comment. I mean, that just says I'm going to be here to try and catch you out, and it's not. That's not the point.
Yeah. Is that how Steve going?
Oh, absolutely. No, it's not about point scoring. It's not about point scoring. It's about getting people. It's about getting people to be better. You want your governance, and I think that essence of the government changes is about audit. It's about skills. It's about bringing some of those things. So one of the last questions about what more could you get from someone is that sort of sense of coaching, to be able to sort of say, actually, I think you can be better at this, or we can ask more appropriate kind of questions. And I think it is about the quality of the questions that can be asked that actually changes someone's thinking. You do it in the business world, you'll do it with your own directors. We're trying to do that with our senior management teams, and again, making sure that we're not micromanaging all the way down, but actually empowering people to become better at what they do. And also to be able to shift the thinking. Sometimes, I think Gary's also mentioned here that, we get locked down into accountability measures, and to be able to sort of say, are we as a government getting too locked down about accountability measures? Is that the most important thing we're doing? Are we losing sight of some of the other things we value? And that sort of essence of what I've taken from the Livery Schools movement as such is to sort of say, well, why can't we be the Elstree schools that you're talking about? Why can't we be like St Paul's Girls and Boys School? Okay, yes, we can't be exactly the same, but what are some of those values? What are some of those additionalities? Why can't the students do rowing? Why can't the students do debating? Why can't because we work out what are those things. But it's about, and it's just sort of saying, but what value will that add to your school? Yeah. So it's again asking the questions and looking across and sort of saying, and I think that's about the value set, because I think one of the things that I was impressed with just before, while I was while we were building the academy, and it was just a story that came out of St Paul's, and it was about Jimmy Whale, who set up Wikipedia, and he was invited as a speaker. He talked as a speaker, a young man called George Burgess, with the attitude, I won't talk about where his funding came from because I'm sure it came within the family, but decided to kind of set up a company, got into a whole load of work that came out of the inspiration of that talk. So we have an inspirational speaker program, or insight program that we call, which is about reflecting on people that want to give it, from the wider side to come in and actually talk, because I really believe in that kind of butterfly effect that actually through significant interactions, maybe with an individual or an event, an event we've gone to, that may actually ignite something that as a passion, and that's where these young people.
There's lots of ways into schools, and it doesn't need to be through a governor. Getting to know a school is good before, I guess.
But absolutely. But I think the importance is that if you are going to commit as a governor, it's actually by the additionality. It's not just the 8 meetings, the 9 meetings a year. That is a basic standard, but it's actually what informs you in those 8 and 9 meetings is your time in the school, meeting the children, asking the questions, and it's actually what Ofsted do. Ofsted come in and sit next to the children and say, the first thing they do is sit with the children and kind of go, is it always like this? Yeah, So tell me about homework. Do you get homework on a regular basis? Children are wonderfully honest. It's the most simple questions that tell you most information. It's the same as in governance. It's why are you doing like this? What impact do you have?
During our recent inspection, one of the more perceptive Year 7 boys was asked that question. Do you get homework? And he said, yes, we are oppressed by it.
Repressed, not oppressed.
Oppressed.
Anyone got any questions? This might. The next thing is we're going to get people behind the desk and have a plenary session where you can ask anything of anyone.
I just wonder, what's the role of the chair of governance?
That's a
How
good
does
question.
the governor work? Chair of the school. What's the sort of communication?
You have designs on being the chair of governance.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
It's harder work being chair. I mean, it's that simple. And the responsibility ultimately sits with you. If I would have to ask who my line manager was, I would say the chair of governance. If a difficult decision has to be made.
But would you get individual governors contacting you separately, or does everything
Yes.
go by the chair?
Everybody can ring me. Well, these days people email 24/7, and what you do is you teach your governors over a while that they're not going to get a response for a good week unless it's something important and urgent. And I'm not line managed by them, quite frankly. But the chair gets a response at 2 in the morning, if that makes sense.
So it's a good position to be in if you want that feeling of power. And do you have any issues with your schooling that has led you towards this point? No. Okay. So
whenever there's any safeguarding issues, disciplinary issues, those are the knotty issues, which will normally end up appeal issues. They'll end up with the chair of governors. It's the chair of governors who's invited to the DFE or the Regional Schools Commissioner or the local authority if there's really serious concerns about the school. It's the chair of governors who the press will hound if there's a financial notice to improve. It's the chair of governors who's named in the Ofsted report. There's a huge distance, and I wouldn't recommend that anybody becomes a chair of governors who's working. Who's working 5 days a week and has young children, to be brutally honest, because it's a huge demand on time and emotional energy over time.
So it's at least 5 to 10 times the demand just being a double.
And having building a good team, so having a good deputy, having other people that have that level of skill set to be able to, that's part of the succession planning, but be able to run one of the other committees and things like that. But I think one of the other things is critically is that not to micromanage. It is to be strategic. It is to be able to delegate, but also to be able to sort of see the aspects of what the head's responsibilities are. So there's I think one of the things that can be a temptation, not just for the chair of governors, but is because schools are really interesting places with lots of really interesting things going on, and you can actually get just drawn in more and more and more. And what we'll do is we'll invite you, and we'll say, "There's this going on, and that's going on."
Yeah,
and there's this event.
we'll suck you dry.
just like a livery.
Yeah, and you've got to. You have
like
to get that balance right.
We'll suck you dry. I mean, we've 17.
there is an important relationship with the chair of governance.
Yeah, I didn't
talk to teacher. The chair draws its authority from the governance. They are a collective. And there is a risk in some schools where the chair of governance believes that they are the people making the decision.
Certainly.
Not collective. That's something that you are a chair of governance. It's a real challenge to make sure that you've always got that authority and everybody understands what's happening.
I mean, the reason my question is if you've got a bad chair,
Yeah,
you
it's
actually have
awful.
a very bad experience.
Yes,
A bad chair
that's
will lead to an ineffective government.
Yeah. That's not uncommon, and you have to take your opportunities if you're not the chair. And you can look at it two ways. You can look at it the way that Michael kind of alluded to without being explicit, which is, you know, if anything looks awkward or difficult about the governors, perhaps don't get involved with the school. You could look the other way. You know, does a well-run school getting high performance need you? And you know, if I discover any of you become independent school governors or high achieving schools, I'll consider it a waste of my evening, really, because those schools don't need people. You know, there's a huge list of schools. I can trot them out now. You know, where the schools, the governing body is failing, the staff are failing, and most importantly, the children are staying in poverty because school isn't giving the opportunity to go forward. And those are the schools to give your time to. Because the children of Dulwich College, that's fair to blush anybody here, they will be fine come what may. The 3 to 5% in public schools in our country, they will be fine. And I say that having shared governance arrangements for some 5 years with Tunbridge, in a shared government, very interesting arrangement for both of us, and very enlightening for all involved. Really interesting.
It's a shared governor?
A shared governor. Oh, they nominated a governor to us.
Is that with Jim Haynes?
Yes, when Tim was there. Is he still there? I don't know. Yeah.
Skinner's school.
Huh?
Skinner's school.
Is it a Skinner's school? I didn't even know that. Do give him other cards.
Emma.
I've been on the teacher side because I've been a teacher in schools in Europe and New York City before I entered corporate life. But in those systems, we don't have governors. So what's the perception of the governors by the teachers? Are they welcoming us like, oh, these wonderful people that just joined us? Or are we going to have to
all depends on the head.
Kind and diplomatic and just
the head sets. I mean, obviously, your own conduct will dictate how you are perceived, and the slightest comment will be amplified to suit the agenda.
So it's like the new teacher has joined the school, and you have
when
to.
It's like talking to a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like,
yeah.
You know, and the whole comment is magnified
Absolutely.
and taken out of context. But the head will set the tone. And if the head says they're coming in, it's interesting, listen to them, respond to them appropriately, you will do. If the head teacher in a private staff meeting makes a dismissive comment, then the staff will be dismissive. You know, and again, as Michael made clear, the new accountability framework makes clear the importance of governors. So quite frankly, the head teacher's foolish to do that. That will happen. I mean, you have to go back to being a teacher. You know, if you're teaching 24 out of 30 lessons, actually all you care about is your marking, your planning, your marking, and your teaching. Actually, that's all you worry about. And if you're
in the PTA meetings.
No,
I had to.
Yeah, I know. But everything else is just noise. Because actually you're going to be judged, well, you know, I'm teaching 10 lessons a week this year. I'm judged on the results of those children. Nothing else matters. Yeah? And so governors, there's a gentle balance between supporting and just making a little comment which might light a flame in them, or keeping it to yourself till you meet the head teacher, or you're at the next subcommittee meeting, or the appropriate place, and saying, you know, I was in that class, and you know, it's a fantastic learning environment. Then I went next door, it's an utter slum. Do you know, is there something we could do about that? I mean, I wouldn't use the word utter slum. It makes the point.
Amongst friends, you know.
Yeah.
I've just realised something. I've been looking at the clock and thinking, yeah, we're getting on really well here. It's only 20 past 7.
It's only 20 past 7.
Well, no, actually, it's
20
quarter
to
to
8.
8.
20 to 8, mate,
We
yeah.
stop the clock when we are fiddling with the side. Don't.
It's old-fashioned technology.
Don't tell anybody, they may not have noticed. So we're going to finish by 8 o'clock by that clock, okay?
Oh, yeah, forever.
It was ever forever. It stopped.
You can feel like that.
You've got the real feeling of a governor's meeting.
Yeah.
I
I won't have a governor's meeting that lasts for more than 2 hours.
No, likewise, and our chair's very good. I mean, I've been head teacher now for 17 years, had 3 chairs, you know, only on just onto the 3rd chair. It is about the relationship between the heads.
Absolutely crucial.
And if you don't get on, somebody's going to.
Okay, let's take this to a plenary. I'd like to welcome Debbie Unstead from the Mercers this evening as well. We're going to form a little plenary here. I'm going to bring some more chairs up, and then we just got another question and answer session. This is you've had your chance with the heads. That's a nice chair, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is he allowed to sit in that?
Very good.
Slides in there, careful.
When we press the button, that's when you get the back.
I didn't realise. Sorry.
And Nick and Michael, would you like to join us up here? I'll bring another chair across.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perhaps I'll put this
that's
there
probably better.
and take the more appropriate.
So that one there.
That's lovely. Go on.
So, it's the last session. It can go on as long as you want, or hopefully less than 15 minutes. It's up to you, really. Do you have questions? So, Debbie, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Debbie Anstead. I'm a governor of Hammersmith Academy, and I very well remember when we interviewed for our first head and in middle school. Yeah. So, and I'm also vice chairman of governors of Thomas Telford, which is another Mercer school, one of the original CTCs and academies on which Hammersmith and some of our other academies are modelled. Mercer's company has governing relationships with 17 different kinds of educational establishment. Big range from a couple of governors and a bit of funding through to actually being the trustee. We are the trustee of St Paul's Boys and St Paul's Girls School, populate the governing body along with external governors, and we've done that since 1519, I think. So different range of independent and state schools. I was Master Mercer last year, but my own personal background is in the not-for-profit sector. And in fact, I've worked in governance roles as a trustee, as a non-executive director, for more years than it would be polite.
Thank you. And I can sort of say I could do an opportunity to publicly sort of thank them, because when I was opening the school, I started off site myself, first in person with BA, and then you're building up the whole staff. It wasn't an established school already. We were building the whole thing, and you were looking for some additional support. And, you know, Debbie was absolutely fantastic when it came down to checking policies, going through, looking at governance, and actually bringing that level of expertise. And it was just, it was just on occasion sort of saying, right, okay, I can pop in, sit down a couple of hours and go through everything. And just having someone from that professional background to be able to just check out, keep on the right lines, make it more succinct in this way, does it have these kind of caveats or various aspects. And it was just a huge amount of help, especially in those kind of circumstances. And I think sometimes it just even just an hour here or an hour there, just to alleviate the huge number of things that you have responsibility, and also now as an established school to be able to support other members of staff. And it just comes down to looking at some things that may have some.
Michael, you're supposed to be part of this as well. I don't know if you just want to stay there and answer the questions.
There's no chair.
We can get you a chair. Nick, you're a current governor, and I asked you to come here tonight to talk about, and Michael as well. I heard you define your life as being in terms of the government's roles that you take on in schools. So I mean, there must be some really good stories you can tell us about being a governor. Nick.
Well, I'll start. I think I know most people here. I think as well. Of course, I was the privilege of being master of the information technologies company last year, immediately prior to Sir David Woodman, and I was very involved with the Hammersmith Academy from the very early days. Joe Connell, who's up there at the top right in the just shortly before she became master, she was chairing what's known as our Charity Development Committee, which is actually a fundraising group where you go out and twist people's arms and say, you'd like to give us some money, wouldn't you? And Joe called me up one day and said, we're doing this academy project, which I vaguely heard about. Would you like to come and help us raise some money? So I said yes. And so I got involved in the fundraising of the Hammersmith Academy. And then Joe said, oh, by the way, I'm going to become master soon, so would you like to take over as chairman of the chair? Anyway, that was how I got involved. And I worked very closely with Gary in the fundraising of the Hammersmith Academy. And it was a real honor and a privilege to be involved in the project all the way through, well, literally from its inception to the fundraising. And then I got sort of sucked into, the steps up to being master, and so I stepped away. But it was always something I was sort of looking over my shoulder and saying, one day I'd like to get back involved in it again. And then the opportunity came up last year. I had planned to sort of wait till this year, and I finished my my deputy master role. But anyway, the opportunity came up last year to become a governor. And so, and I know Wendy Palmley, who is obviously a very knowledgeable governor, having been a headmistress herself. And so I have spent a lot of time talking to Wendy, getting background. And I've never been a school governor before. It was a long time since I left school, and a long time since my sons were at school. So it was,
Are you regretting it yet?
No, I'm not regretting it.
Are you enjoying it?
I'm still in the learning phase. To be honest, I mean, it's probably about 8 or 9 months I've been the governor of the Hammersmith Academy. I'm still in. There's a huge amount to learn, but that was actually one of the things that was interesting to me. I mean, I'm a great believer that as you go on, if you don't keep learning new things, and you don't keep stretching yourself to achieve new things, you go backwards. So one of the challenges for me was I wanted some projects. I'm a project person. I like doing projects. I like to have a thing that I can see how it's going and what I'm trying to achieve, and have a sort of a time frame for it, I suppose, like this. So to me, this was a perfect time to get involved with the Hammersmith Academy. It's been open 5 years. It's now just coming up to, for those who are not familiar, but we started with 130 students in year 7 and 130 students in year 12, and then we've added up, and now we're at full complement for the school. And this year we'll have our first students coming out who have started in year 7. Will be doing their GCSEs and going into year 12 and doing their A-levels. So now it's sort of grown through that development phase. So now it's okay. Now we've got it through that. Now what's the next stage for it? And so to me, my background is I've been an IT businessman for a number of years. I've run a couple of big companies. I've helped companies grow through very fast periods. I've helped all early stage companies grow what I call change gear. How do you get from this stage in the growth to that stage in the growth to that stage in the growth? So to me, it's a very interesting time to be involved with the Hammersmith Academy and look at how can we help it grow to the next level of maturity of that school.
But what I hear you say is that the skills that you built up in your commercial life are directly applicable to the
Well, I'd like to think
governor.
they are, but as I say, I have no knowledge about education, so I'm on a steep learning curve, and some of it.
Well, you did go to school, I assume.
I went to that's a long time ago now. Well, I mean, very kindly, I came to. There's been some tremendous help, and the question I think from Michael about induction and things like that was very, very key. I was very kindly last year, just after I became governor of the Hammersmith Academy, I went and spent a day at a governor's conference that the Haberdashers had. I went to another one in February earlier this year, the Mercers had. So I had and both of them have given slightly very similar but slightly different messages, but they were very complementary. It was very good indeed. The first experience I had of all the safeguarding stuff that you have to learn was actually the Haberdashers and the 19 different areas of sexting and bullying and this, that, and the others, and all these different areas. You've got to make sure that there are policies in place, and not only the policies in place, but the policies are effective and they're constantly reviewed, all this sort of thing. So it's been a fascinating learning curve, and I've really, so far, I'm very positive.
Thank you, Deputy Master.
I think one thing to is that Debbie would agree that you mentioned about Mercers academies, that generally those schools that are literally involved with schools, we're not in competition. I mean, I'm not trying to say that I've got more schools than the nurses. I'm kidding, Jenny, I'm kidding. The point is that
However, I just want to make a point of WCIT that their school has the highest value added just about across the private and state sector for Key Stage 5.
Sorry, which one?
Mine.
Oh, yours?
Just another thing for WCIT.
Give us a round of applause.
What I'm saying is that generally all of us in these living companies, we are passionate about giving kids the best chances in life, in education, and we're therefore generally far more interested in sharing what we know than trying to beat any other organisation. That's the point. I think that's particularly true of the livery companies and it's the livery schools movement, if you like.
There are enough schools to go around.
Indeed, because it's a joint sponsorship between Mercer's and United Government. It's a great example of real, genuine collaboration from day one.
Absolutely.
I think day one was Tommy Luby in another of his offices writing on the back of a paper napkin, I think I could do a school. Now, who do I need as a partner? That was the story I heard. I think it's true.
Would you like to say?
Yeah, sure. When I stepped down from being master here, I'd had about 4.5 years as a trustee of the Hammersmith Academy. Before even a student had walked through the door, I had spent some amazing times down at Lillian Baylis School in a very tough, rough area. And I had been particularly impressed with the way Gary would have students walk into his office and the way he handled them and so on. And I therefore felt inspired that I would try and give my time into education because I thought I knew something about it. Oh boy, was that a mistake. I clearly knew nothing about education. Anyway, I had always worked nationally or internationally in the charity world, but I'd never ever done anything locally for my community. And I live on the outskirts of a horrendously depressed rural area of Hampshire, where the army moved out last summer and none of the parents had had any education. The school was totally failing and it was a failed school. And I thought, this has to be worth doing. So if you like, I applied to say, could you use somebody with my background? I don't know anything about education, but I've had a glimpse and I love it and I want to do something. And so I ended up as a governor. I didn't manage to step back as quickly as the other governors. And within 6 months, I found myself as chair of governors. And then 3 months later, because I'm part of the Chichester Academies Trust, which have actually 8 schools spread throughout Hampshire, Surrey and Sussex, the Vice Chancellor came up to me one day and he basically bullied me into becoming a member of the board for the Academies Trust. So for the last 2 years, I've been not only chair of my own school, my failing school, which is now rapidly turning around, but had this incredible experience of taking on other schools, both at primary and at secondary stage. So I've been through a huge learning curve. I must have been on 9 different courses, some of them lasting 3 or 4 days each. I'm probably in the school 3 times a week. Because I'm a failing school, my governors meet once a month. So Michael said the right thing, but only when you've got your school act together.
One of the ways I'm involved with, we're starting the school in September, and the building isn't finished yet. We're meeting once a month.
And by the way, I've got 32 million to build a new school, so I'm also having to go through that one as well. It's an amazing experience. I've never worked so hard in my life. How I ever had time to have a real paid job, I have no idea, but no regrets, and it's wonderful, wonderful to watch.
Education is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Education is life changing.
Can I just add one thing? So I asked two friends, one's just stepped down from being a chair of governors, my children's school, and one is a chair of, is a governor in another school. And I did, I said, how'd you do it? And we got past the moral purpose of wanting to give something back and things like that. But what was interesting, because they are younger, they're in their sort of mid-40s, children, kind of late primary, early secondary, so different kinds of pressures, and with the big important jobs, especially in the creative industries. But interesting, they were saying about how much they learned by being on a governing board and actually dealing with intractable issues and problems, and taking that back into their own world, and actually then approaching problems that they were facing in a different kind of manner, and you know how they, through that kind of solution focus, they were improving the way that their practices and then the management and the leadership practices, and applying that into their own range of responsibilities they had in the wider industry. So that I was surprised by that. Wasn't expecting that answer. And, getting that back.
Do we have questions?
Yes,
Michael.
I would like to ask about the bureaucracy of school standards, because one of the fears I've got is that you actually get so bogged down with the detail that actually you can't really fathom what they're after. This is what Ofsted demands, or this is what the education ministry, whichever it's called now, business information and skills, is it? Not sure. But anyway, those kind of diktats for the governor, there's quite a big learning curve. And is it daunting? Is it actually off-putting?
No, I mean, it's all about how the information is presented, because governors aren't sitting there with a naked spreadsheet, which is, for the paid hands to be there. And so what they're doing is being helped with the analysis, identification of trends, knowing where the school sits, where it sat last year, where it's hoping to get next year. And we do quite a lot of, particularly the curriculum subcommittees, and I imagine most schools have that sort of equivalent of trying to drill down and understand what the information, and there is masses of it, actually means. And so the challenge to the head or to the head of department would be, why is it that this particular cluster of children in this particular year group appear to be doing less well than the national average, or less well than other cohorts within the school? So it's that sort of thing. But raw data is not our business. It's yours.
Michael.
I was actually quite shocked when I first went to my first two governors' meetings. One, because I didn't understand a word that anybody said, and I thought it was a complicated language in the IT business and the military business, but it doesn't have anything on education. The second thing was, having always worked for American companies, I was not used to, can I dare say this, a more bureaucratic approach to life. And it was quite difficult for me to understand that you have to go through so many processes and so many decision makings, and things took a lot longer than I probably would naturally have the patience for. The other thing that really did amaze me, and I'm not very good at this, is actually looking at piles and piles and piles of data and understanding what in children's lives and their futures it really means. And there is a huge amount of data that you do need to understand to help your school and to help your students, but you get a lot of help doing it.
So welcome to education. Well,
I think one important point, if you think about women's school government, we talked about the difference between the independent sector and the state sector, is undoubtedly within the state sector, the bureaucracy, the reporting, Ofsted, all of that, and the relationship with the state and the authority, I mean, is far more enveloping and say intrusive, you might say, but positive. It's a far bigger issue for a governor than if you're a governor of an independent school. And I think one thing we haven't really talked about is the relationship of governors with stakeholders. It seems to me that the governing body, and it's true for any charity, any organisation, really must pay attention to the reputation of the institution in the world outside. There are all sorts of different stakeholders, but our stakeholders are not just current parents and the local authority and so on and so forth, but in local communities, but also sort of future generations of parents, because they're the future customers. And the governing body needs to be absolutely clear about the sort of reputation it wants its school to have, and be very quick, through you, when you pick up the jungle drum saying, there's a problem out there. We need to know about that, and we need to see what we're able to do to help through our networks to address any problems that might arise.
I also think somebody with a marketing background can actually add a lot. I mean, in my particular school case, we're losing 300 children to a school which is outstanding in a town 7 miles away. The children that can't afford the bus fares come to my school. And it's critical, of course, that you have to keep the cohort up and you have to turn around the situation so nobody feels a need to go to another town for a school. And this whole concept of putting the best foot forward and changing the character and the reputation of a school generates a lot of work with the press, a lot of marketing materials, a lot of work on the telephone, and a massive amount working with the parents. I mean, I deliberately spend a lot of my life in Lidl's because I know I'm going to meet all of my parents in there. And I wear my badge and I get into great conversations, and I know I've added to the cohort of people that are not going to the enemy down, sorry, not the other school down the road.
And you've saved an amount of money on your weekly shopping. Michael, you had a question?
Yes, I don't know if I should table this question, but there we are. I mean, why first of all school fails? And I think why I mean, everybody say, okay, we took on the failing school and we did this and that and we brought it back, or we are trying to come back on the track. But I think I'd like to hear a little bit more about why the school was failing. What were the reasons behind it? I mean, one of the things I saw in Michael's slide, that common sense. I think I'd like to hear a lot more about the common sense. I mean, in my life of business, I come from the corporate background. I have no education background whatsoever. Common sense is not very common. I think so it's not. I mean, I think I wish it was, but I think it is not. And I think education-wide will be different. And I think when we talk about the common sense, then what common sense are we talking about here? I'd like to hear a little bit more.
So what did you mean by common sense when you said that?
Having courage. Say this doesn't make sense. Explain to me. You should be careful what I say. We don't talk about why schools fail.
No, sorry, that was a two. I must say there are two different questions.
Okay.
So I'd like to hear that separately. That why, if you say failing school, what was not right there? For example, the governors were not right, or something was
I can cover that very quickly and very simply. We had 5 head teachers in 1 year, and in my first year, never for repeat outside, we had to get rid of 23 teachers and replace them with good teachers.
Sounds like working at Yahoo.
There's an old Chinese expression, I think that Gary is going round on me, but let me finish. There's a Chinese expression, and apparently it's biologically true, that a fish rots from the head.
Oh, yeah.
Fish rots from the head
first.
What's right? This is not peculiar to a school. What is generally wrong with a school if it fails? Look at the senior management team first, not the teachers.
Yeah.
It may be that the teachers are a problem, but look at the senior management team, including the governor, the chairman of governors. And the chances are, if you're going to take over that school and try and turn it around, you'll fire the senior management team and change the governors. It'll be the first thing that you do.
Does that say that the school is the senior management team and the governors?
Now, it's rare that you get the bad senior management team, but I mean, they can't, well, but it's, if that doesn't work, if the school isn't working, it must be, or if a company isn't working.
Yeah, exactly.
So how easy to fire the chair of government or the senior manager?
Well, if fire the senior management team, it's going to be a question of probably redundancy costs of some sort,
Are you talking about a particular school, by the way? I mean,
No,
do you
I'm
see
not.
failing school that you want to get
I'm
involved in and start?
Because you see, I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm very curious.
I think it's the same. I think it's the
Can I,
same in
can I
business.
just say before you say that, we're going to go on for about another 10 minutes. Is that okay? I mean, we can go on for as long as you wish tonight. But you want to drink? Well, there's drink out there. So we're going to go on for about another 10 minutes, and then you can have your reward. Yeah? Okay, Michael. Sorry. Sorry, Gary. You were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to sort of
You've
say,
worked a lot of failing schools as senior manager.
Absolutely.
What's your experience?
I'll be fine. I think it's just really interesting. It's about identifying what the issue is, and I think it's easy to come in and go bounding in and sort of say it's that. Yes, invariably we look at leadership and things like that. And Ofsted have actually changed. They've begun to change their view because new head teachers were going into schools, and then we're only given 6 months before to begin to show results. And they're saying, look, we're going to let you alone for at least 2, possibly 3 years to really have that impact. And that's the reality. If you're going to put in some new leadership or set out some clear expectations that you then hold people together, but it's about them working together with them and working with them really effectively. When I went into a school as a senior deputy, prior to getting the job, when it was the walk around with the head teacher, it was very much, and it's one of those things that, you know, when you start a new job, go in for a period of time and actually watch and listen. You know, and you learn that from business, you learn that from other aspects. Find out what the issues are. Ask the cogent questions. Find out the person who smiles to your face and, you know, is very pleasant to you as you walk in. But actually, when you're asking, you're finding out they're the blockage, they're the difficulty. Yes, you may have to end up moving on 23 teachers, but you don't do that straight away, because what you will do is you come across some gems of people who have been underperforming for a while because they've lost their passion, but you find out it's still there. You know,
I mean,
sorry,
and the saviour for my school was finding an outstanding new head teacher who everybody would follow, everybody could believe in, that he worked well with the local community, would turn up to council meetings, just a wonderful human being.
There's a primary school in Plumstead where he took it from requires improvements. So from the lowest grade to the highest grade in one academic year, hardly known before, but didn't move on any staff. New head teacher that. When a school fails, it's no different to a censure, Enron, or any large organisation. There's a complete loss of leadership. And you know, you've got 23 inverted commas bad teachers, however good or bad they were, because the school have been badly led in the past, and they've been allowed to accumulate. And what you actually have to do is do a bit of spring cleaning, and you always do it around spring, and you kind of say, I don't want to say too much, but you know, Mystic Meg whispered in my ear that you might not be getting your performance management stroke appraisal pay increase next year. I know, that's interesting. Thank you for that, teacher. And then hopefully by Friday they bought the TS and understand that the following academic year it's time to find another school and somebody else's children to disappoint and fail. Rather than have one I'm responsible for. Because what else can you do with me? What do all of you do in your businesses if you have somebody who's not quite good enough?
What's amazing though is they always say that the most important job of board of governors is the appointment of a head. Okay. The second most important job of board of governors is the firing of a head. And what is absolutely extraordinary is that some of these schools which have failing, the board of governors has allowed them to continue in that state for at least an academic year. And
Or
they have
longer.
to take an action quicker.
But it's difficult because as governors, if you've appointed somebody, you feel you want to give them a chance. It'll always be presented as other people. It's never the head, because most of your contact and information and the way you perceive things comes from the head. It's a bit like the chief exec presenting to the shareholders about why prices and profits are collapsing. It can all be externalized very easily by the head teacher. And it doesn't matter how much you look through the data and the data summaries, it doesn't matter how much you look at compliance. It's difficult to nail until you get 2 or 3 very simple things, which is Ofsted, which gives a judgment, or whether you get the performance tables in the press, which has some very clear and concise measures against national benchmarks, and that's summarising all sorts of Ofsted data documents. I wouldn't worry about bureaucracy. I wouldn't worry about whether a school is failing. In the end, worry about whether you care enough to give up your time to help the children that you've met on the walk around. And if you do, everything else will follow. And if you don't, it'll be like visiting the member of your family that you don't particularly visiting every time, and you won't want to go ahead with it. And some people, as Michael spoke about, and Nick's been into school as well, you come into my school and you meet young men, you meet 93% black and minority ethnic students, the majority of whose parents or grandparents were born in a country that is one of the highest pupil premium free school meals poverty indicators in London. And they're absolutely fascinating, and their ability just to, hello, how are you? What are you doing?
It's fantastic, like it's on the desk.
Yeah. And and if that grabs you, that's great. And if you're absolutely passionate about kind of working with those people and you get that kind of buzz from me, then that's what you do. And everything else, I just wouldn't worry about once you've decided to give the time up.
You've almost answered what is common sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Last question. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say one last comment on that. Is I've been in the business of evaluating companies for takeovers, all sorts of things like that. And one of my basic lessons I learned many years ago the standards starting on top.
Yeah.
And you look at the standards at the top of an organisation, and if you're the right person at the top, gets reflected throughout. And and so I've looked at lots of businesses. I've seen some business with wonderful ideas. I say it's a great idea. I just don't have confidence in the management team at the top to be able to deliver on that. So, Hans, thank you very much. I'll look at something else. And that's the way you look at it. I look at it anyway.
Hey, man, last question.
Yeah. So of course, human capital is what really makes companies and schools. But would you say that after that is financing? Is actually having the money to be able to do the things you would like to do with your head teachers and whatever?
There's a few schools in the pigsty areas of Britain which are very badly funded, let's not deny it, including Michael's area, compared to those that are luxuries in the city. But you've got your money, you've got your human resource. A great teacher is what you need. The kids need to turn up, they need to behave and expect decent behaviour, and there needs to be structures around them to support the children who can't behave, be it from bereavement to special educational needs and everything in between. And then you just got to teach them well. It ain't rocket science. And you focus, if you're leading a school, those are the things you lead on. And the finance actually reasonably looks after itself as long as you don't accumulate a lot of people with a lot of miles on the clock. And you can keep moving that on by just ensuring you've got decent professional development so that they are prepared for jobs. And actually a very good indicator of a poor school is huge numbers of people often who've not moved on for years and years because they've never been able to acquire the experience, skills and knowledge in order to move on. I mean, I set aside from that schools which in the private sector where there's tied housing, that's a slightly different story. But in the state sector, in the cities, when you walked into a bad school.
Can I just, you are running a small business. I mean, I've got 462 pupils. It's a £2.5 million a year business. And by golly, if you get it wrong, you are in deep trouble.
That's what I asked, because it's like running a startup.
Absolutely.
When you get proper funding, you are able to execute better, and your vision.
And you don't know what your funding is until it's actually too late to adjust your budget. Which is a real challenge.
I'm going to be honest. I have another new governor who's run finance, some big organisation. I'm going to come in and spend a day, look at all the money with you and show you how it's done. And at the end, I go, oh yeah, 70% roughly on staffing, fixed staff costs, your rent, your heat, your light. What, have you thought about doing a switch off the lights campaign? No, it never occurred to me. What I'm interested in is cheaper teachers, to be blunt. Do you know what I mean? Because that's the biggest
more
cost.
for less.
More for less. Sweating my assets.
This is not about bringing the accountants and the auditors that will reduce your costs. What I'm saying is bringing the financiers. Like, how big is your vision for your school? Okay, well that will cost X. Maybe we need to bring more funds.
We have the chair. I'm going to cover just a second. Sorry. The chair of the chair of my finance committee for the last 17 years has been the same person, and it's he started off quite low at Grant Thornton, and he's now quite senior. And that all you need is one person who can kind of look through it all with you and kind of go, this looks about right. Let's do that, and all the rest of it.
Last comment.
You're constantly subdividing, aren't you? Your ambitions are always, you've got to think big and want to do various things, but it's the easy steps and all the simple steps that you're going to take in order to be able to get there. And of course, what happens in education all the time is you then shift and change. Your education policy changes. You have different ideas, new technologies come in, and things like that. You do have to cost those things effectively. But just to finish, as an analogy, exactly what Gary was saying. I think of the program Can't Cook, Won't Cook, or the ones where they bring in some really simple ingredients and a great chef turns some very simple ingredients into something tasty fantastic. And I think that's what you're looking for all the time, is just always getting those individuals to be able to do something really magic in the classroom. And that's where the priority is. 70% of your costs, and the teachers in the classroom and all your other systems working towards making sure that they're producing something that's great. Okay.
So, thank you ever so much. Now, I've only got another 20 minutes of slides to go through before we get on to the. Now, it just remains.
Longer than a governance meeting now. So.
There are some very thirsty people.
It's just to say, to offer a great thank you to Michael Jeans for your wonderful talk. Thank you very much. To Danny Instead, who's come and given some wisdom, so thank you very much for that. To the two Garys who are, if you want to hire them, I think you're available for parties.
Double A.
Yeah, straight man, a gay man. Oh, was it funny man? Oh, sorry, it's a funny man, isn't it? That's
So 50s.
And to Nick and Michael, thank you ever so much. Thank you for coming this evening. I hope you haven't been put off being a governor unless you didn't really want to do it in the first case. And I hope you've taken some. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I've got no idea what Education and Training Committee are going to do now about this. However, there are loads of schools out there, and we're going to find a way for those people who want to be governors to become governors, if not in the next week, if not in the next month, then perhaps in the next year or the next 2 years. We're going to find a way of doing that because it is a role that's important in the community. It isn't fully staffed. You said 10% of schools
One of the best ways through, given the members of your company come from the commercial world,
yep,
predominantly, talk to the Academy ambassadors and Kirsty Watt.
There we go.
Because she is really looking for people.
The recommendation, well, I'm sure we can offer is bring a governor brings a potential governor to school, just to come see how we do it. Come and listen, come and see, and get ask questions. So it's trying without buying.
That's
We have an open day.
We have an open day. I was just about to mention that. Yeah.
You're very welcome to pop in there. You're very welcome to pop in any time. The place is full of visitors.
So, I mentioned the next engineering. God, what am I talking? Education and Training Committee meeting is on the 15th of June, and it will be held at William Bayless Technology School. There will be an open day that Gary's put on, especially for us to go and see and meet the pupils, meet the teachers, do some teaching if you want. Never leave the school again, I think was one of your aims, wasn't it? Although it's you that has the problems of getting new teachers, isn't it? So we'll do one for you as well. Everywhere. So okay, so we're going to do that. That's an exciting day. It'll be really good to find out more about the school. Let's do that. You need to send in an email what you just told me so we can organize something that way.
What, about the New Schools Network?
Yes.
It's on the slide.
It's on the slide. That's good. That's
the
good.
name you need is Kirsty Watt.
Okay. So if you could email that.
Just on that, I'm on the Living Schools Link Committee, and we've got a meeting next week with the Academy ambassadors.
Oh, are you? Great. I've tried to put them in touch. But Living Schools Link said you try to do various things like expand itself and doesn't have the support for that. I know.
Yeah, I'm going into it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got things that we can do in the next steps. As I say, it's not going to happen in the next week. It's not going to happen in the next month, but perhaps in the next 1 or 2 years, we can get everybody that wants to be a governor to be a governor. Thank you ever so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. This wine outside. It's probably warm by now, of course. But
well done.
Thanks ever so much.
There you go.
Hey,